The Badgers roll over 12-2 Nebraska. How good could this offense be historically? We get into all that along with big football news. I'm Rajiv. He's Justin. Welcome to the Bucky Report.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective. Woo-hoo! Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome into the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. We are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, at the Bucky Report on YouTube, and available wherever you get your podcasts. Justin, I don't know about you. Your NFL team won today, so that's exciting for you. My NFL team, the helmet behind me, Mr. Jonathan Taylor's team, did not. I'm a little salty, so not the best mood for me this weekend. But if you watch the Colts-Texans game last night, you'll know why I am not in the best of moods. But we'll talk about that a little bit, I guess. How you doing, my friend?
Not too bad. We've had a long layoff. It's time to get rolling back into it. It's been a week, right?
It has been a week. Yeah, we normally don't like to go a week, but yeah, I mean, I've traveled a lot over the holidays, and the holidays are a busy time for everyone. So now, new year, reset things, basketball season's in full effect. We've got so much to get into, man. It's great, but let's lead off with this. Oh, by the way, we're 3-0 in conference. Pretty good start to the Big Ten season, my friend. Really, really good start, actually. What a game against Nebraska. So let me preview this by saying we're going to get into the Nebraska game a lot for sure, how good this offense really is. When was the last time the offense was this good? We're also going to talk about some coaching moves, right? So you probably all heard that Jack Bicknell is no longer the offensive line coach. He's now been reassigned to some other position on the team. We have Kenny Guiton. Is it Guiton or Guiton? Do you know how to say his name? Guiton. All right. So Kenny Guiton is a new wide receivers coach from Arkansas. And we're going to talk about Jaheim Thomas, some other transfer portal stuff. And of course, before the show ends, we will make our national championship prediction as well. So let's start, as we always do, Justin, with 3 big takes. Why don't you go first this week and give me your 3 big takes from the week?
Number one, Connor Segian apparently back. Good to see him in the lineup and making positive plays. Definitely earned some more time with that last game. Number 2, I will say it's really interesting to look at the first year of Wisconsin football and the coaching hires and how that's played out. And it's a little, I think some of the things, the areas of concerns that people had with some of the hires played out.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, I really think that this basketball team has a chance to be something special. I'll just say that in general. I think that they can have a chance to be a really good team this year.
Yeah. I mean, my question is, how special can they be, Justin? How far could they go? I know last night you guys were on Locked On a couple times yesterday, and I know you guys talked about, I know Ryan said he's still not a Final Four team. He doesn't think he's a Final Four team, but he did say potentially Elite 8 now. Are you saying potentially Final Four, potentially Elite 8? Where
I would
at?
say Elite 8, but I think a lot of it's going to be matchups for them. Like we've seen what this team's shortcoming is, and it's playing teams that want to play really aggressive and that are athletic. They struggled with Providence. They struggled with Arizona. Now Marquette, they didn't, so that was interesting because Marquette plays similarly. But I think Providence might have been a little more athletic than Marquette, even though less skilled.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, it's all about matchups. You said the right thing. Your bracket, who's in there, what seeds fall earlier before they play you, all these things play into whether or not you can get to a Final Four. The question is, are you simply good enough to be a team that can go deep in the tournament? And I think the Badgers have shown that as of now, they are. They are a team that proved and has proven that they can go deep in the tournament because they've beaten good teams. And that's the important thing. So my 3 takes, number 1, Tyler Wall being healthy and playing the way that he is as important to this team as having additions in Blackwell and Storr. I mean, the additions are critical, but Tyler Wall has been playing out of his mind. And if you remember back to last year and how difficult it was for him to come back from that ankle injury, what a difference he's made. Number 2, the linebacking core in 2024 could be the best position group on the entire team. I think it's you can kind of, if you think about it, we're going to get into that a little bit, but I wonder how that, I mean, you can see it kind of there's not a lot of other groups that have certainly been strengthened the way that the linebacking core has, but we'll get into that a little bit. And number 3, this is not Badger related, but it's Badger adjacent because it's talking about a Badger. Jonathan Taylor was the best player last night on the field for the Colts. Don't take him out on a 4th and 1 play when the game is on the line. That is our Badger. That is our boy. You leave Jonathan Taylor in the game. If you didn't watch the game,
he runs hard too. Like he's a guy who's capable of picking that up. Why?
It was 4th and a half a yard. I like the play call actually. It was a pass. It was running back out of the backfield. The problem is it was our 3rd string running back. It wasn't Jonathan Taylor and it wasn't Zach Moss. That's ridiculous. So I had to throw in one of those takes too because I'm just furious about how that went.
That's fair.
Nebraska, 88-72. The Badgers got it done yesterday. Huge win over a team that, Justin, I think even before the game, you were like, sneaky, tough game. Not exactly a walk in the park, but it sure looked like we played that way. What are some of your initial takes?
Well, I think it was obvious. I said that I thought Nebraska was actually a pretty darn good offensive team, and I think we saw signs of that in this game. What we did really well was we really limited their second chance opportunities in this game. And that made it hard for them to stick with us because I don't think they had an offensive rebound until like less than 5 minutes left in the game. And that pretty much was the story in this one. They couldn't get second opportunities. Wisconsin was able to get some, and we were just we had more size and we were a better rebounding team out of the two of us.
It's really interesting to see how strong this offense is. I mean, we're just putting up record amounts of points, but I want to talk about Tyler Wall. Honestly, man, I mean, what a game. 17 points, 6 of 10 from the field, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. And he just bossed the paint, which I think is really great to see. As I mentioned in my initial takes, I think that him being healthy is so critical to this team. He's like the Swiss Army knife in the paint again. He can shoot from anywhere. He can go under the hoop here. He can handle the ball well, but he has been so critical. And I think the way he played yesterday was amazing. And I loved seeing him out there and playing the way that he is. And I'm telling you, I think he's the most important player on our team this year. And I know how important Storr is and Blackwell, and they've been incredible. But what Tyler Wall has done I would argue, somewhat has gone under the radar a little bit because people are so excited about Blackwell and Storr and what they're bringing to the team. And then people are talking about Asijan and everything that happened with him. But I think Tyler Wall is getting undersold a little bit. Wow. Some of my other thoughts. Chucky Hepburn. I know you guys talked about Chucky yesterday and how he's really in that role that he needs to be in now of a facilitator. So far in the season, he has 56 assists, 24 steals, and 18 turnovers. 56 assists and 18 turnovers. That's a really, really good ratio. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, he's also shot 5 of 8 yesterday. He's still scoring the ball. So that was really good. Defensively, I think that I'm happy overall with how we played defensively. I thought that we did a fairly good job of Klesmet denying Tominaga. I mean, look, you're never really going to stop a guy like that. He's just so lethal whenever he touches the ball. But I thought we did a good job of that. And for the most part, other than a few times where we left the perimeter open, I think we did okay guarding the perimeter. Like that masked guy, he was left open a few times when he was draining some threes. And Nebraska scored a lot of points. But so defensively, I'm okay with that. And I think, again, every single game, we continue to get good efforts from them defensively after that Providence game. So that's nice to see. And another thing is Crowell, obviously another key contributor. I like that, once again, he's shooting. So he took 2 threes yesterday. I think he went 1 of 2. Look at what it did for the spacing. You saw Crowell getting guarded on the perimeter. And that's what we've needed because all of a sudden then it opens up so many more lanes for other people. So overall, I was really pleased with the performance. And Justin, we're on our way. 3-0 in conference. We look pretty good.
Yeah, it was interesting. I thought that the defense, and Ryan and I kind of discussed this yesterday when we were talking, is one of those things with this. When you get ahead like this and you're hot for offensively, things just get loose. And there's a couple of things that happen. Like there were times we didn't always close out perfectly, but you tend to get a little sloppier defensively when you're lighting it up. And that was fine. The lead was never truly challenged. They seemed to tighten up when they needed to. But looking at this game, yeah, you were not wrong about Tominaga. He's a guy who probably has the quickest release in the league.
Oh my gosh.
It's incredible how fast he gets the ball off. And that their starting group is actually a really strong group. It's just that we played lights out and we have more size. And I think we have a little more athleticism than them, a little more skill. And it showed in this game. But this was definitely a game, if Wisconsin hadn't brought I'd say this was probably their A- game. The A+ would have been them winning by 30, just if they completely lock it down on defense. But we were about as hot shooting as I can remember ever seeing us play. And with us playing at this level, the only team in the league I think that can beat us is Purdue if we play like this. Nationally, there's not going to be many teams, and maybe Arizona, a couple others, but this is going to be one of those weird years where there's maybe 4 teams total in the country that you look at and say, like, these are truly teams that are dominant that you can expect to make a late run. I'm not even sure we have 4. Like, I would say right now, Arizona and probably Purdue are the top couple, and they get tripped up every once in a while when they don't play well, but their ceiling is the highest out of the teams in the country.
Agree on the ceiling, and we're going to trip up too. Look, there's going to be games where we just lay an egg, and when we go to Penn State or wherever it happens, it's going to happen. We're not going to be great the entire time, but I agree with you. When you look at the Big Ten right now, other than Illinois and Purdue, we shouldn't be challenged. We should finish third in the Big Ten. I think to me, that's clear at this point. If we finish 4th or 5th, then something went wrong, or maybe another team came up out of nowhere, and that's okay. But let's get some comments in a little bit. Dark Ray, this team doesn't shoot well enough, and we lack interior defense. We do lack some interior defense, but I think this team is shooting well enough right now. I mean, the offensive efficiency, as Justin's talked about a lot, has been really high. And Dark Ray, I think that we are scoring at a record pace. So, I mean, I think I would agree with you that on paper, you would think, well, we don't have as many shooters as we need. But the thing is, the guys are shooting really well. I mean, Crowell is 12 of 18 from 3, and that's just a tiny example. But and especially if you get CE3 back in line, we actually can shoot a little better. Will Hanna, Nebraska is a good team, and it was a really good game for Bucky offensively. I still question their defense from time to time. Will Hanna, they're passing the ball so well. As long as they shoot a reasonable percentage, they are going to be tough to beat. Brian says CE having this game he did after not playing against Iowa said a lot about him. Justin, what's your take on Connor? I know you guys talked about him a little bit yesterday, but 12 points, rapid fire, actually. I was watching the first half in my office because I worked a little bit yesterday, and I got up to go to the bathroom, and I came back, and Connor had like 9 points. I'm like, wait, what? I didn't even see him come in the game. I mean, it was just shocking, but you get that kind of confidence growing in a kid like that. It's going to pay dividends.
Yeah, Connor's not afraid to put the shot up. And in that game, they actually sought him out a little bit. I was happy with, honestly, the first 3 or 4 shots that he took. There were a couple that I didn't love, where I thought it was kind of some heat check stuff, but he played really well. And if this is what you get out of him the rest of the season, he's going to be a guy that in that second group, he's going to be somebody that scares them. That's only going to open up things for Blackwell. It's going to open up things for McGee. It's going to open up things for Winter when he's in there. Like, there's guys that are going to get opportunity because you have somebody who's keeping the lane a little bit more open than it should be.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Justin. I mean, he played 12 minutes yesterday. Connor did. And Blackwell played 19. So Blackwell's minutes came down a little bit. Klesmit's minutes came down a little bit with Connor in the rotation. And so did some of the other guys like McGee and such. Over under 14 minutes, averaging 14 minutes over the next 3 games. What are you saying to that?
It's so situationally dependent. I'm going to say under. It might not be significantly under. I do think it goes up from where it was, which was probably 3-4 minutes a game. It'd probably be 10 at least, which I think is where you'd like to see him and continue to go. And if he gets hot, it might jump above that. But like I said yesterday when I was talking to Ryan, the biggest thing that comes out of this is you have an opportunity if somebody's having a poor game. You now have the option to put Connor in there and see if he can provide something, to potentially pick up the scoring if somebody's playing poorly like Klesmit, or if Blackwell's not feeling it in a game. Now, Blackwell typically does so many secondary things really well that you want him out there anyways. He's a plus rebounder, plus free throw shooter, and he actually passes pretty well in defense. So, but Connor adds a dimension for sure. He gives you something that we definitely needed on this team, which is some flexibility if things aren't going perfectly the way you want them in a given game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I agree with you that it's probably going to be under. I would say 10 to 12 is about what he'll end up playing. It's all going to be down to whether he makes his first shot in so many cases too. I mean, he came in hot yesterday, so Gard had to really put him back in there. And he has improved defensively, which is good. He's working hard. And that to me is the big thing. Like, yeah, he's not a great defender yet. He's not going to become Chucky Hepburn or Max Klesman overnight, but he is going to work harder. And that's what it appears to be. And then he'll get some time. And if he can drain those threes, I think you can see more of that, playing out. So the title of the show, Justin, is the best offense since when? We are averaging a record pace for points. I mean, we had 50 points before halftime. I can't even imagine a Big Ten game in the past that I can remember where we actually had 50 points at halftime. How good is this offense? And when was the last time our offense was this good? Are we looking back to 2015 at this point?
Well, Ken Palm says it's a top 10 offense, number 7 right now after that game. I would say it's the best since 2015. Now, 2015, when you look at how ungodly incredible that offense was, 2015 was 129 for adjusted offensive efficiency. This team's at 119, and I think we'd all agree that this is an incredible offensive team. That is insane how effective that team was in 2015. So really what it comes down to is this team lacks NBA athletes that team had. Like, you had a legit National Player of the Year and another guy who was a top 20 pick in the draft, which is a little bit different. And then other guys who were like borderline NBA players, and Koenig and Nigel Hayes, some other really good players on that team that were capable shooters, which made a big difference. This is a really good offense. It's honestly, it's going to be good against everybody except really athletic teams. And we'll see how many of those they actually run into this season that are capable of actually scoring on their end. Because you could play a really athletic team that just isn't capable of being offensively efficient, and it won't matter. Because we'll probably still execute better than a bad offensive team. But right now, that's really the only team I'm scared of, is somebody who can make it really uncomfortable for Klesmet and Chucky and, Crowell in the post. If you can take out those 3 guys and kind of limit it down to basically Wall and Store being the plus guys, that's where we're going to run into some trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I agree. I think it's 2015 is the last time the offense was this good. And what's really surprised me the most about this offense is the lack of scoring droughts that we're really seeing. We're not seeing them. And we've talked about, obviously, the ability to get to the foul line is a big part of that. You said on a show last week, or I think it was on a reaction show to Iowa, that we're back to doing what we did in the Bo Ryan days of making more free throws than our opponents take. That was a really good point that you made. And it was a hallmark of Bo Ryan teams. And it's how they avoided those scoring droughts. So we're doing that right now, which to me is a surprise. I knew that we'd obviously be better offensively. I think everyone did. But to say that we now have the best offense we've had in 9 years, and we're actually able to put up 50 and a half and put up 90 and stop ourselves from going into a scoring drought. Not to mention, Justin, Nebraska shot the ball really well yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every single time
they
went up
were
like
50%, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. We went up like 17, then they'd eat back to 11 or 12, and then or 10, and it never got into single digits. But it looked like Nebraska was firing so hard that they absolutely could have got back in the game, but they didn't, because we never let them. And I'm telling you, last year's team and other previous teams would have let them. It would have been a 5-point game before you knew it. And that's the difference here. You have so many weapons across the board. It just matters, and it makes such a big difference. Mm-hmm. A few more comments here. Stephen Kill says, does the Big Ten really get you ready for the tournament? Because let's agree, it's very mid. Bo Dragon says, worst Big Ten competition in 20 years. What's your take on that? I mean, do you feel like, I think Stephen Kill's question is fair. What are your thoughts?
I think that the Big Ten, I don't think it prepares you for the tournament because of the style of play. It's much more freewheeling in the tournament, and the referees don't let you play like they do in the Big Ten. So things get ticky-tack, and you tend to get into foul trouble, and the Big Ten teams don't typically have the efficiency offensively to win those games. They're so used to grinding out games, limiting possessions, and it's not pretty basketball. And this is where the top couple teams this year are going to be a difference. Like Illinois, Wisconsin, and Purdue can play against anybody. Mm-hmm. And that's going to help them. I wouldn't be shocked if we go into the tournament. We're going to end up having like probably 7-8 teams from the Big Ten. And we're going to have some teams that just they're going to have stinkers, because there's some teams that I just really don't see end up playing well. Like Michigan State right now, unless they really turn the corner, they feel like a team that's going to be out before the round of 32. They just, if they make it, like they've played poorly, some poor basketball this year. Iowa won't make it. I don't think Maryland will make it this year. I'm trying to think. Indiana just got smoked by Nebraska. Nebraska actually has a pretty good shot at being a tournament team this year.
There's a lot of teams in the conference that have decent records that are good enough to basically say, look, if you go over 500 in the conference, you're going to get in.
Yeah.
I mean, even a team like Minnesota, who's like 12-3 right now, who we didn't really expect to be 12-3. It's all about the Big Ten season now. And I think that there is an opportunity for a lot of teams to get in, and who knows, we'll see how good they really are. Another comment I wanted to put up here, Dark Ray says, Klesman is good, but he doesn't provide enough offense, and Connor should get a few of his minutes. I think that's probably what you're going to end up seeing is more of these matchups, depending on the matchups.
I think it depends on the team we're playing.
Right.
Like if you need his defense out there, you can't afford to take him out in a game. You can settle for Klesman not necessarily being productive offensively, provided the other four guys are. He's still a threat. You still have to show on him defensively. In the case of Connor, it's going to be a game if we're struggling offensively, you need him out there to potentially pick up the team a little bit and provide an instant spark if Klesman isn't playing well. And that's a possibility. It's nice to have the option, which is not something we had 2 weeks ago.
Now, yesterday, this number was a little bit lower. Bo Dragon has a comment up here. It says, as much as I hate Gard, I see the Badgers as a 2 seed. Now, yesterday, this was a 3 seed, Bo. So I want to understand this a little bit.
Inflation.
I agree. I think that they can be. I don't think it's going to be a 2 seed. I think 3 or 4 is actually going to be where we end up. It's all going to. I mean, those net rankings and the Ken Poms, they matter, and we'll see kind of how we go there. But it's how many times are we going to trip up in the Big Ten, lose to teams that we shouldn't lose to, and can we get any more big signature wins? Because now the only 2 teams that we can build signature wins are Purdue and Illinois. The rest of the conference, none of them are ranked. Some of them might get up there at some point. Michigan State's always going to be a decent win, and we'll play them again soon. But that's going to be interesting to see how high we can go. What's your ceiling on the seed that you can see us obtaining?
I think we could get to a 2. I think ideally for Wisconsin, I don't want to be less than a 3 going to the tournament because I would like to avoid the 1 seeds. Avoiding the 1 seeds means you're not playing Purdue and you're not playing Arizona, which for Wisconsin is a huge deal. Like those are 2 bad matchups for us. Where against Purdue, our big man is mitigating against both of them, to be quite honest. Both of them have a big man that is superior to Crowell, which makes it a problem. Now, we're probably not going to get that version of Arizona again. Like, you're not going to get their A++ effort against us a second time. I still don't like them. Like, they can beat us unless we're playing at our A level. They could beat us with their C level. So I would like to avoid that at all costs, and hopefully they end up getting knocked out by somebody else.
Yeah.
We're talking about them. I mean, if there's a matchup with them, the way I view it is if we can be a 3 seed, if we're playing a 2 seed to get to go into the Final Four or to the Elite 8, I'd much rather be facing that 2 rather than than the number 1.
Sure. Tyler Schreiber says, I want to see Klesman start attacking the rim more. He really impressed me early last year, how well he did getting down the lane and finishing. Seems like he's gotten away from that. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm curious if he's a little tired. Like, he has put a lot of effort into defending so far this season, and he hasn't taken it downhill a whole lot. Now, part of that is Max is at best our 3rd, 4th offensive option, probably 4th.
Fourth at best.
Him or Chucky, it might even be 5th. Like him and Chucky are probably splitting 5th option. So how you're not going to run plays for him. Chucky's going to have the ball in his hands, so he's going to kind of decide his own offensive fate. So it's going to be tougher for him to get opportunities to go downhill because you're not going to be isolating Klesman. It's last year we did a little bit more of that because it made sense to do it because we were limited, and quite frankly, Klesman was actually a solid offensive player for us. But you don't have banged up Wall anymore. You have Crowell, who's slightly better than he was last year. You have Storr, who's a massive step up from anyone we had, and I think that makes a huge difference. Now, we could use a better version of Storr going forward. Like that was a bad game for him. I felt like he was one. But it's a good that's to me is a good game for him to kind of remind him of the things that he needs to be aware of when he's playing, like to be better. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, this is a confidence check for you to be like, you can't just go out there and try to dominate and take whatever shot you can get. You need to still make smart decisions out there on the court.
It sure is nice, Justin, to be able to say that we can win a game by 16 when Storr doesn't play that well, right? I mean, that's how well everybody else played. And obviously it helped with it. Connor was in there shooting, and we shot well.
Think about that, and I brought this up talking to Ryan. If we were in the Johnny Davis season, there was no chance that we would have done that in a game that he played that poorly. Like we would have lost by probably 10. In this game, we ended up winning comfortably because we had enough support to be able to withstand it.
100% agree. 100% agree. Thanks for all that are joining us live. I'm going to put up some more comments. These are great comments that are coming in here. Cody Schmidt says, Badgers are at best of fortune. The Big Ten is way down this year. Cody, I think you may be right about how the Big Ten being down will affect the seeding, right? I mean, that will affect
the record, though. Like,
right.
If we end up with 27 wins,
it could, but also, I mean, it could certainly, the strength of schedule could be hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
Deborah says the Badgers got significantly more offensive rebounds than Kentucky in the 2015 Final Four game. Nebraska didn't get its first offensive rebound until the middle of the second half. Dark Ray says, I think a 3 or a 4 seed. John Shapiro, good comment here. There's lots of season left, and the team is still developing. Blackwell, Storr, Winter, and Esigian are still defining their roles, and when they do, they would be the best offensive team yet. And Cody Smith says, I'm still trying to figure out why Marquette is ranked so high compared to Wisconsin.
I'm gonna have to push back a little bit on that one. Like the best offensive team yet. That was 2015 has like the record in the modern era for offense. Just to put that out there. They have the highest adjusted offensive efficiency of anybody since like 2000 when Ken Pom started. So I love this team and they're really good offensively, but that's a really lofty goal for them to do that, even if those guys come around.
Look, it's even a win to be even talked about. Like, yeah, it's like no one's saying we're better than 2015. We're not even close to that. But the fact that you're looking back and saying, well, since 2015, there has not been an offense like this, that is a huge step. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, it's 1 year removed from a large percentage of the fan base saying they're on the fire Gard train. And I think most people have come off of that. Now there's some people that still are. And if that's your opinion, that's all fine. I was never on that. And I'm glad that Gard is getting some of his due now, certainly from a recruiting perspective, obviously getting Storr to come play here. He hit on Blackwell, and then, we'll see next year how free tag fits into this whole thing. The more athletic athletes you bring in, the better things are going to be. And I think Gard has earned his keep now.
Well, let's look at it this way. 2016 wasn't this efficient, and that team was a half-court shot away from being in the Elite Eight.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells you what level they're playing at right now.
Yeah. All right, finishing up on basketball, Justin, I want to ask you this. We have 6 games left in the month of January. At Ohio State, home against Northwestern. At Penn State, home against Indiana. At Minnesota, home against Michigan State. 6 games. Tell me how many wins we're going to get in the month of January, like from here to the end of the month.
In all honesty, I think it's going to be 5.
Yeah.
I think they have a legitimate shot at 6. Because, like I said, this is the thing that I love with this team offensively is that they are efficient enough that these teams, most of them, are not as good offensively as Wisconsin is, and they have a chance to run away from them, even if they're not playing a perfect defensive game, just because they can continue to score. And those teams, most of them can't. So really what's going to cost Wisconsin is either one, they have a game where they're just awful defensively, or number 2, they have a game where they hit a team that just can't miss from 3. That's what's going to potentially be a loss.
Which is going to happen. Like I said, it's going to happen, especially a road game potentially at Ohio State, maybe at Minnesota even.
I think they'll be locked in for Ohio State. So I actually think they'll win that one. I think it could be likely somebody else that they'll stub their toe on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still too early to tell in the Big Ten season how good some of these other teams are and whether
that's fair.
It's not like it's going to just take us stubbing our feet. I mean, the other teams can come in here, like you said, and just shoot the lights out and be dominant against us or matchup problems that get created. So I'm going to say 5 as well. And I'll tell you what, if that happens, at that point, you're going to be talking about 8-1 at the end of January, first place in the Big Ten because Purdue already has a loss. Mm-hmm. That's pretty special to talk about at the end of January being in that position. And even if it's just 4, you're still talking about being 7-2 in conference at the end of January. I mean, there a lot of good things coming from this team, and it's just so nice to see 1 year removed. 1 year ago, we had game after game inside 5 points, close games, getting tired. I heard you mention something yesterday, which I thought was great, that the teams, the more we can beat teams, the less tired we're going to be at the end of the season too. And it's going to allow us to be better poised for a longer tournament run.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's move on from basketball a little bit. We're going to talk some football at this point. Coaching moves are happening. So Jack Bicknell, no longer the offensive line coach. He has now been reassigned to an analyst position of some kind or something.
I believe it's an analyst, but they haven't officially come out with what it is.
Right. So we need a new offensive line coach. Justin, what are some of your thoughts on this? I mean, I'll go ahead and go first on this one. I know you guys talked about this a little bit yesterday as well. So I'm all for it. I think that it's just, to me, it's one more step of Fickell creating the ecosystem that he wants from his team. Now that means players, that's coaches, that's everything. I mean, we've seen a lot of people transfer out. We've seen a lot of people transfer in, and I think that's a good sign. It's not just a good sign when everybody leaves. That's not good, but it is good when you're trying to create a new system and put new things in place. So while I don't want to see yet another offensive line coach, I think that with Longo and Fickell both being here, both staying here, it's okay that you have a new offensive line coach, because whoever gets brought in is going to have to fit into that system that Longo wants. And obviously it's different from the previous, coaches that we've had and the previous systems that we've had. So I'm not really bothered by it. What I'm happy about is something that I think Ryan said yesterday as well. He made the move right away. He 1 year in, he made the change. Great. Do that, because Fickell knows what he wants. So I want to see what he can build. And I'm all for seeing things change and mold, as long as when he identifies that a change is needed, he makes it. So we'll see what happens here. Now, who it's going to be, how effective they're going to be, it's really hard to say. Offensive line is one of those, it's so difficult. But I see it as a step in the right direction, because if Fickell thinks something needs to change, he's going to change it. He's not just going to live with the way things were this year. And let's be honest, the O-line play wasn't very good this year. I mean, there were times where it was good. Pass pro was good. Run blocking was okay at times as well. Certainly from a penalty perspective, it was not very good. And now we've got, certainly a whole new crop of freshmen coming in. I'm okay with the move, and I'm not really bothered by it.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaway I have from this, and kind of on the same wavelength with what Ryan said, is he made the change right away. And I think that I agree with that from the stance of, you have a set standard of what you expect and what you think is required in order for this team to be a national title contender, or to get to a top level team that's capable of competing for something like that. And if you don't feel that coach is giving you that level of quality, I think you have to make the move right away and say, hey, I know what I need in order to achieve this level. And if this person's not giving it to me, I can't just wait and see if it works out down the road. Like, we saw improvement from the offensive line. They were better towards the end of the season than what they were at the beginning. But I think it's admirable that he, even with the change and the development that was happening, that he still didn't think it was good enough, and that he moved on. So the biggest takeaway that I have is the problem is that we're changing again with this group.
Yeah.
Now, on a plus side, you're still staying with the same offensive scheme. So I'm hopeful that whoever replaces him is teaching the same techniques. And so it's going to be second nature to the guys.
Well, and I think they would have, they're going to mandate that, right? They're going to want someone who's going to obviously be on the same wavelength. Right.
But I think you also need to have somebody who, if you're, you want somebody who's going to hold these guys accountable. I think there's the article from, who was it that was out there? Colton Bartholomew, saying they had somebody who anonymously said that some of the players weren't happy with the accountability and being pushed as much as they would have liked. And I think I would agree with that. I think that we saw during the season where certain players were not playing well and they weren't getting pulled. And in my opinion,
feel like we brought that up on like every show. Yeah. I feel like it gets host.
That should have been there should have been consequences for poor play. Like, I get that you maybe in practice you give feedback or whatever. At some point you have to say, you need to get it together or I'm going to play somebody else. And I think we saw in that bowl game, Rucci wasn't terrible. Like, he wasn't dominant when he went out there, but he wasn't bad. So if you would have needed to take Nelson out for a series to kind of be like, hey, get your head straight, I think that Rucci was good enough to go out there for a series and been fine. And I think that we learned that coming away from this. And that's what you need to have, somebody that's going to hold these guys accountable. They need to be pushed so that we're the level of type of offensive line team that we were in like 2010. Now, we're probably not going to get to that level. But if you can get close to that, where you have a group of guys that you have 6, 7 guys, where if somebody screws up, you have a swingman who can come in at tackle or, a guard and just say, hey, you need to get your head on straight. This guy's going to be out there until you can go out there and play at the level that we expect of you. That's what you need to get to.
This question came in earlier in the show, and I started and I wanted to bring it up again. I want your take on this. Does the Bicknell reassignment mean Fickell and Longo aren't gelling well? I think it doesn't say that at all. To me, it just means that obviously I know this was a Longo guy. Like, he obviously kind of brought Bicknell in, but I think that it's a situation where Fickell says, look, Fickell's in charge, and he understands that there was a change to be made. And let's be honest, Longo could be part of this too. Longo and Fickell could have both gotten together and said, this isn't working. We need to make a change to the O-line, so we're going to do this. But I don't think it necessarily means they're not gelling at all. In fact, I think that it's all about the program moving forward, and Longo's still here and Fickell's still here. So they clearly got together and made this. This is not just Fickell walked in and said he's out. Now, maybe it is, but I don't think that's the case. I believe that they're moving in the right direction, and they're doing so together.
Yeah, I think that there's probably a dialogue that's happening between the two of them. I'm not going to say that it probably went down with no angst associated with it. There probably was. It probably got heated, but I would have expected that to be. I mean, this is Longo's guy that he's bringing in, and I'm sure that he was brought in on Longo's recommendation. I'm sure Longo probably did feel, you'd probably be defensive if that happens in that circumstance, where he comes in and says, yeah, this guy's not cutting it. He's got to go. Well, the standards that we're going to hold this at. And I'm sure that's coming across on the offensive side of the ball altogether. Now, we heard some other things that came out of this, that Brown and Longo didn't necessarily get along super well. There's multiple areas. I think that there were some hiccups here. And these are new guys that are working together for the first time. Now, Longo and Fickell knew each other, but they'd never worked together before. And that's probably not going to be perfect day one. Like, as great as you'd like it to go initially, they probably have very different ideas of what they think is, the best way to do things. And Fickell is different the way he views things than Longo does, I'm sure. So in this circumstance, I think that there may have been a little bit of angst that was associated there. Now, I think Longo probably understands what the ultimate goal is for everybody, and is probably on the same page with that. They've still got to figure out, I'm sure Longo's still going to have input on who he wants as offensive lineman and line coach. They'll probably discuss this thoroughly to make sure that they're on the same page and that whoever comes in is a good fit for the offense.
They probably already know who they're going to bring in.
I would be shocked if
part of the discussion of moving. I feel like in that situation, who you're going to bring in if you're moving that assignment. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that there always is going to be discussions, and there's going to be angst, and there's going to be disagreements, and that's okay. Fickell's in charge. Longo's the OC, and as long as Longo remains the OC, I think we can all agree we're moving in the same direction as we were before. It's just fine tuning, right? This is identifying a position group that frankly underachieved this year, and didn't have the discipline and the accountability, as you say. So a change needs to be made. And as far as I'm concerned, all it does is increase the upside of where we are. You're bringing in a nice crop of O-linemen. Obviously, I'm really excited about Kevin Haywood. I think he's going to be a great guy for us to tackle. Nelson's coming back, so hopefully he can, kind of regain some of his form and be the guy that we hoped he was going to be, and improve his draft stock. Renfro at center. So there's no reason to think that this line is not going to be good, but I'm excited for a change. I'm always excited for change. Change to me means more hope as well, which I'm always good with.
An underrated aspect of this that I didn't even think about when it happened was, with such a big offensive line class coming in, wanting to get your guy in so that you can make sure that the quality of development they're given from day one is there, is a huge deal. So when you get rid of Bicknell, you don't instill bad habits or let these guys kind of rest on their laurels a little bit coming in. You get somebody who's going to push them to the level that you expect right away. And that's a huge deal to have somebody come in with them and have them be trained from day one up to the level that you're expecting, because they have to hit on these guys. You look at it, this last group that they have out there this next year, basically most of those guys are going to be expected to be pushing into the 2 deep or playing by next year, or not 2024, 2025. They're going to be expected to be able to be on the field as redshirt freshmen.
Yeah. Well, Bicknell wasn't the only coaching move. So we also have a new wide receivers coach, Kenny Guiton from Arkansas, who's been there, I think, for 3 years. Yeah, he's connected to Luke Fickell from his days at Ohio State. He played quarterback at Ohio State from 2009 to 2013. So they know each other through that. I don't really know much about him, just other than the fact that he's got a nice string of 4 stars at Arkansas. Appears to be some good development of his wide receiving core. But, what are your initial thoughts on this? And do you think that he will help in the recruiting world?
Yeah, I think he's going to be a strong recruiter for us. You get him in. I think you look at the room that they have at Arkansas. He seems to fit what most of us as fans have been looking for, which is getting a lot of big-bodied receivers for the outside and some nice slot material. So he's got a bunch of receivers that are in that 6'3" range that are on the roster there. I would anticipate that that's what he's probably going to target here. He seems to be a high-level recruiter. There were multiple players that when he initially came that were talking about that he was the reason that they were there. So I trust him to build really good relationships. And it'll be interesting to see if Wisconsin holds more weight than Arkansas in terms of recruiting nationally. He's obviously going to have a different area. He might be recruiting Texas. It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if they put him on Farrakhan right away, the wide receiver from the same school as Mabry Matoyer, right off the bat. That guy was a playmaker big time for them. So that's a guy, if they can chase after him and get him to come in, would be a really nice pickup for us because he's a 4-star talent and a guy that Wisconsin's on already. It'll be interesting. One of the other aspects that I thought about for this was, do they stay on the same targets going forward? Or does Guiton look at it and be like, I don't like some of these guys. Let's switch this up. I got these other guys that I was targeting. I would assume whoever he was targeting at Arkansas, part of those guys are probably going to get carried over to this offense, provided that Longo doesn't see any scheme issues with them, which I would assume there probably aren't going to be too many. But we'll see how that goes. It will be interesting to see if we see like 10 offers suddenly go out at the wide receiver position, because then we're going to know that there's people that they've moved off of going forward that they want to switch up the wide receiver recruiting.
Yeah, that could be. And obviously, Kenny will have a new vision for what he wants. And it would make sense for him to recruit Texas. Obviously, Arizona, Arkansas, they do recruit in Texas. I think he actually has pulled in a couple people from the state before as well, which is good. So not only coaching moves, we also have some transfer portal news to kind of get into a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit of transfer portal. Just a quick reminder, by the way, for all of you out there. If you do like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button, leave a review, leave comments. We love the feedback. We appreciate it so much. We recently hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we're very, very appreciative of that. So certainly send us your feedback. Let us know. And if you ever want to be, if you ever want any impact on what happens on the show, send us an email. If you want to join us on the show, let us know. We're always happy to hear more voices. So Jaheim Thomas, yet another linebacker in this class, Justin. I said at the start of the show that I feel like the linebacking room can look really, really good next year. It's a complete overhaul at this point, and it could be the strongest unit on our team. And I believe that because of everything that's there. Now, it's all upside. We don't know. We haven't seen these guys play together. But if you look at the talent that's being brought in and you see the slow removal of Paul Chryst players from the lineup and an influx of Luke Fickell players, you're going to begin to see how this team's going to take shape. So Jaheim Thomas, who had 90 tackles last year, led Arkansas in tackles, will be a new inside linebacker for Wisconsin. What are your overall thoughts on Thomas and the linebacking room in general?
Well, my thoughts on Thomas are that he's probably going to come in and be the number one middle linebacker starting right away.
Day one starter. Yep.
Yes, he is going to be their number one guy because number one, he's got a level of comfort in the scheme because he's already was at Cincinnati prior to Arkansas and knows Tressel's defense, which is something that Chaney got better as the season went on, but still wasn't super comfortable in. So he's just physically is what you want to see out there. I think what you'll be looking at next year to start the season is it's going to be Jaheim Thomas, and then the other spot's going to be Allegro and Chaney splitting reps. And we'll see who fills in there. And I think that's an upgrade. You're going to have far more athletic interior. I think the outside, Ryan and I talked about it a little bit at outside linebacker position. I think it's honestly going to end up being Lowry and Pius because I just think that they're more athletic than what we have out there. I really was not impressed with Peterson this season. Like for his size, the lack of burst and follow through after it seemed like every time I watched him, he would bust his butt for the first 3 seconds of the play. And if he didn't get there initially, then he tended to jog it out and 3/4 it. And it's like, that's the difference between you and somebody like TJ Watt. TJ Watt was a monster. He would keep running, even if he's 5 yards behind the guy going around the edge. If somebody cut that guy off, he was going to be the guy that came through and just blew him up. And you need to be that type of player. Like there were so many times this season where effort could have been the opportunity for us to change a game. And I think that that's something that these other guys have the ability where they have some athletic upside that he doesn't have to make those plays initially. Like they don't have to get to the after, because the biggest takeaway that I had from our pass rush this season was the fact that there was nobody who could get home right off the snap. It had to be a coverage sack or it wasn't happening. Like we didn't have guys considerably beating offensive linemen. They may win their battle, but it wasn't necessarily in a decent time to be able to get enough pressure on the quarterback to disrupt things.
I mean, my biggest memory of Peterson this year is the Ohio State game and the number of times that they ran plays to the outside and he was unable to set that edge and really affect those plays. And that goes for Getz as well. And I know they both flashed at times and they're both talented and they've got their place, but I agree with you. I don't know about Pius. I think it's hard to say right now. He hasn't played it. Lowry, I think, yes. Fair. I think Lowry's going to start, but Pius, where he came from, William & Mary, you just don't know. It's hard to say at this point how he's going to immediately fit into the Big Ten. But if he even can provide depth at the position, I'm okay with that. Because
I think he's got more athleticism. It's going to be hard to see what the production actually is.
Right. But even if he can push the guys a little bit and push Peterson, then I think you're going to have a little bit of a pickup there. But I think we both can agree the room's far improved.
Yeah. The linebacker room is incredible.
Do you think I'm crazy to think that this could be the best position we have on the team next year?
No. It's tough. There's a couple of positions that have a lot of upside. I think we're sliding the wide receiver room a little bit. Now, I don't know what to take away from that bowl game, but I do think that there's talent. Like I trust in both Pauling and Tretch to be able to make plays. I think that Green looked really good towards the end of the season. And I think that if Vinny Anthony can be a solid receiver on the outside, I think the wide receiver group is actually pretty good. Now, I think we saw how much difference having a center that can actually get the ball back quickly to a quarterback makes. We talked about that from the get-go, that was a problem. And Noto Whale, I'm going to say this right now. I miss Bobby April too, but you can't undersell how badly we missed on the high-end talent that we brought in out of that group. You look at the 3-4 stars or guys who were close to 4 stars that were brought in, none of them panned out. Bowlers, Peterson, Caden Johnson, all were misses. And we have to look at that kind of and be like, man, did he have a great eye for evaluation? Because maybe he didn't.
Yeah, I mean,
how many of the guys did he actually recruit that were dominant out of that group? I can't answer.
No doubt. You know, it's been so long since the bowl game. We didn't have a midweek show. We never really talked about the bowl game too much. I know that I haven't actually been talked about it at all, really. The receivers look great. I mean, Bryson Green, I feel like that's the guy we've been waiting to see all year. And obviously LSU has very, public secondary issues. They gave up a ton of yards throughout the year. We talked about that on the show the day before the game. So I'm not surprised that we threw the ball all over the place. I'm really impressed with how well I think the receivers played. Certainly Pauling and Green, but you still need that. Mm-hmm. We still need something at that receiver end. So I'm going to say the linebackers could be the best, but
there's one more room I was going to say on top of that.
Oh yeah, please.
Not till 2025. And that's going to be the running back room. It may not be this next year, but the year after, I feel very confident that the running back room is going to be the most talented room on the roster.
Assuming that we don't have people leave the program, yes. I mean, we don't know.
That's always a potential issue. Like. But I would think that they're going to have the young guys will have even more opportunity the year after. So,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of strengthening happening all over the map here. Obviously, O-line are bringing in a really good class, so that looks good for the future. Of course, running back does. Receiver, again, jury's still out a little bit. We've talked about that. We still need to add talent there, but we have certainly a plethora of guys that, if they hit and if they're strong enough, could be good. Tretch, I think we both agree, is going to be great. The secondary is an area that I feel like we have a lot of young guys. We haven't really seen Snowden yet. We don't know how much of an impact he's going to have. Some young cornerbacks, certainly with a guy like Gard coming in, but linebackers still seem to me like, wow, like talk about a total 180 from where we were a year ago to now. That is me. I remember talking before last season about outside linebacker, and we were right. It was a weak position. We thought inside linebacker would be stronger. It wasn't. But now you got a whole new crop of linebackers. I mean, Allegro was such a breath of fresh air. So I think that's really nice to see. Looking forward a little bit, if you could only have one, I know everyone says DL and wide receiver, which is clearly true. If there was only going to be one more transfer, one more player, which we know is not true, what position group do you absolutely want filled? Is it D-line or is it wide receiver? Or is it
D-line? And I say that without hesitation because so much of the ceiling for this next season is completely driven by, will we have the ability to stop a decent offense? And if we can't manufacture any type of pressure, and the defensive line's got to at least free up the linebackers, and I don't know if they can right now, then we're going to have a problem all season long of being able to consistently stop teams with a pulse. I think that USC is going to be very gettable this next year. I think that UCLA is definitely going to be a team that's not necessarily super impressive. I don't think they're on our schedule this next year, but it will be really interesting to see those teams like Washington, Oregon, and USC, how they look with the new QBs and what they look like. So yeah, no UCLA. So looking at it, it's going to be one of those things where we take a look at it and we have to find a way against some of the teams that we're going to have on there. I'm scared to death of Penn State without a decent defensive line, because Kotelnicki is a guy who will run it down your throat until you prove that you could stop it. And it's so triple option heavy that, like, I know people want Willer and the young guys out there. That is not an offensive style that you want to be playing with young defensive linemen, because that is a recipe for disaster for them getting out of position and leaving gaping holes. And I've watched that Kansas offense and what it looks like when they get rolling. They will run for 7-8 yard pops left and right because the defense cannot line up correctly on them. They're putting guys in motion. They're shifting guys around. They're pulling guards, moving guys all over the place. And it gets the defense just confused, and they start making plays, and suddenly they're scoring in like 5 plays. And most of it's been running.
Yeah. We have 3 D linemen who we're really excited about, obviously, in Johnston, Willer, and Howard. But that's not enough. That's not. We need to build from the portal. Mm-hmm. I hope the next 2 guys, 3 guys, whatever, are D linemen. I agree with you. It's really just to me. It's also not close. It's D line all the way. And if there was only one, it's got to be D line, because we have to be able to stop the run, as you said. And we need cover for these guys. I mean, it'd be great to see if Willer and Howard, especially Howard, could come in next year and be a strong D tackle. But you got to have depth, and we're going to need that. We are playing in a brand new conference, basically. And for those watching on YouTube, I just popped up the schedule. It's not an easy schedule. When you look at the schedule next year and you see what we've got, Western Michigan, South Dakota, and Alabama, of course, is our non-conference. The first 4 games of the Big Ten, 3 are on the road. At USC, home against Purdue, at Rutgers, at Northwestern. Now, at Rutgers and Northwestern are not games that we should lose, but then you go Penn State at home.
Northwestern, man, they were what?
True. David Braun's done a great job this year.
They have a 9-win season this year?
They had an 8-win season.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if they were 7-5 in the season or 8-4.
Penn State at home, at Iowa, Oregon at home, at Nebraska, and Minnesota. It is a gauntlet of a schedule. So yeah, I think it's very clear that we still need to add more. And when we're going to lose, is the portal officially closed now?
Yeah, nobody can get added to it, but you can still, whoever's out there can still choose a team and commit. So there's going to be people, a lot's going to start happening here quickly because, well, let's see. It depends on when you have to have registration in for classes is going to be a big deal. I would assume anybody who's going to be winterim and they're going to get in right away for that likely has to be in already. Mm-hmm. So that's clearly done. Now we're looking at, I think registration for Wisconsin is somewhere in the you have to be enrolled in classes by like either the late teens or like the 20th of January.
Well, so the 23rd is the first day of classes of the spring semester.
Yeah, they have to be registered and in.
Yeah.
They have to be ready to attend. Now, there's some leeway with that to an extent in terms of what they'll allow, depending upon whether the teacher or the professors will allow them to come in and work with them on it. I think that they get a few days that they'll let slide, but for the most part, you have to be ready to go. And I would assume anybody we're going to have in this next couple of weeks here is going to be chaotic, to say the least. And then we have winter conditioning starting this next week too. So, not this next week, the week after. So there's going to be plenty to talk about going forward.
Yeah, most definitely. And of course, our beautiful basketball team we're going to be talking about as well. When is our next game? I need to like look at the schedule here. The Badger basketball team plays at Ohio State on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So Wednesday evening, 7:30 Central Time. There's a game tomorrow that I want to talk about real fast. By the way, anything else on Badger football transfer? Any other notes that you had on that?
No, there's definitely going to be some more people moving. I'm very curious to see how it breaks down over the course of this. I think there's a couple of positions that they still really want to target. For all I know, Tackett Curtis might still be in play. That's been a really quiet transfer situation. And we've heard people say that it's us in Ohio State. I have no clue what's going on there. I wish we had more insight. Now, Wisconsin's been very quiet with any of their transfer people, which I get it. You don't want to have stuff out there. In the case of the transfer portal, the less that's said, the better, because you don't want to draw attention to it when people say, "Oh, so and so's actually visiting Wisconsin," because that perks the ears up of some of the other big teams. That I think Luke Fickell and the staff have a reputation of being pretty good at doing evaluations, and that might draw some teams in that they didn't want.
Right, most definitely. All right, so let's move on to tomorrow's game. National championship, Michigan-Washington. We're going to do a quick prediction here about this. So Michigan obviously beat Alabama. Washington beat Texas in a thrilling game, actually. Texas really should have won that game. They actually had a chance. But what do you see happening tomorrow? Give me a score prediction for the national championship, the end of the college football season.
I think it's going to be Michigan. I think better defense. And I honestly think that they're capable of running it down the throat of Washington. They're the team that you don't want to play against if you're Washington, because I think they're capable of holding on to the football and just running clock. Like what they did to Penn State is potentially what they could end up doing to Washington in this game, where they just sit there and they're like, you know what? We're going to run the ball 30 straight times. And we're going to get 4 or 5 yards every time we run. And you're going to try to do everything you can to stop it, and you won't be able to. And I think Washington's got a solid defense. I just don't think they have a defense that's built to play this way in the trenches. And I think that that's going to be a problem for Washington over the course of the game. I think that Penix is clearly the better quarterback out of the two of them. But how many opportunities does he truly get? And it may be a game where if he has 2 or 3 drives that he can't get anything rolling is the difference in the game.
Yeah, I wrote 2 things down: control the clock and frustrate Penix. And I think that that's what Michigan's going to be able to do. I agree with you completely on controlling the clock. They're going to play Big Ten football. They're going to use what they know and what they have done all year in our conference and run that ball. I think Blake Corum is going to be a huge part of that. They're going to absolutely do it. And if they can control the clock, and they're going to have to frustrate Penix, get him off the spot, make him.
And they have the depth on the defensive line to do it. They can definitely pass rush.
Exactly. Those 2 reasons, I also agree. I think Michigan wins 30-24. Washington's still going to score. Michael Penix is a great quarterback. They're going to get on the board. I think Michigan's just going to control the game throughout. I think it's actually going to be, it could even be a greater margin. Washington will kind of close it out at the end. But 30-24 is my official score prediction. Do you have a score that you want to put out for tomorrow?
I don't know how many drives there will be in that game. Like if Michigan does what we think they're going to do, it might be something like 24-21 or something like that. It wouldn't shock me. Now, don't get me wrong. I would love to see Washington win this game. I don't think they have the pieces. This feels like a game where when it comes to physicality, I just think that Michigan's capable of being able to dictate. It's a lot like Badger basketball. If you can't get them to play at your pace, then you're in trouble, because they're going to sit there and they're going to grind and grind and grind until there's nothing left. And then you start getting a little anxious and you start doing some things that you shouldn't because you're trying to make plays that you don't normally want to make because you're on limited time and you're down. They are capable. Like they talked about one of the keys that came out of that game with Washington was people said that Texas should have ran the ball more. It probably would have changed things quite a bit. They ran. I think they're super productive in that game. They had something like 180 yards rushing against Washington. And if they're capable of putting that up, you can imagine what, Michigan's capable of doing on the ground against them.
I think Sark just totally threw that game away at the end. I think the play calling at the very end of that game was absolutely atrocious. I mean, Texas had the game in their sights. They had the ball deep in Washington territory, and I thought the play calling was just horrible at the end. But that being said, Washington's in the game. Now, I believe I'm in the minority in a little bit because I am someone who's actually rooting for Michigan in this game. I recognize that people are going to think, what the heck is wrong with you? Michigan's an old Big Ten team. I know Washington's a new Big Ten team. I get that, but they're still a Pac-12 team for now.
Technically,
for at least this game. So I do want Michigan to win. I do feel like it's been a bit of a stain on our conference that we haven't had a tournament, a championship since Ohio State's last one, and Ohio State's the only team that's done it. So I understand that a lot of people disagree with me on this. I know Ryan does. I think you also do, and you're rooting for Washington.
I'm kind of indifferent. Like either one of them. I think it's going to be Michigan, but I don't really care who wins out of the two.
I mean, I know there's a lot of talk about obviously everything that Michigan's done in the past, and I hear all that. I know it's all out there. I'm going with my heart here. I'm going with the fact that I just want a Big Ten team to pull this off and get it done. And any final thoughts, Justin, before we wrap up the show today?
No, it's been a good week. Let's keep it rolling. Let's get some good, productive work in the transfer portal done, and let's find out who our new offensive line coach is.
Yes.
So that we can get moving forward with that. And obviously, they can't do anything with winter conditioning anyways. But what they can do is they can start, I think pretty sure that they can start meeting with players a certain number of hours per week to start going over things. It'd be nice to start getting those guys ahead of the game, especially with some of the young guys that have come in as early enrollees, to get them used to their position coach.
The changes keep happening. There's things that are going to keep it. We're going to see players in and out. We're going to see players moving. We're going to see changes. But in my opinion, change is simply leading to an ultimate goal of what we want this program to be. And basketball, hey, 3-0 in conference, we move forward. We will move forward as well. We will see you guys sometime in the middle of this week, probably on Wednesday for our typical show, and then next weekend again. As always, take care, and on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.